Well, this should be quick. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where for the third game in a row, all three games so far this season, one of the two teams in the Kraken game jumps out to a 2-0 lead, only this time they actually hung on to that lead, and unfortunately, if you couldn't tell by the tone of my voice or the way this has started out, it wasn't the Kraken, as the Dallas Stars defeat the Kraken 2-0, shutting them out, so first time the Kraken have gotten shut out this season, in Dallas on the second half of a back-to-back for both teams, so it's not like the Kraken were the only team that was dealing with a little bit of fatigue, and actually not the only team that was missing a defenseman from the prior game, as Vince Dunn does not play in this game, which was, I feel like, kind of expected after his late exit in the previous game. The Stars also missing one of their defensemen, but the Stars are just a much better team. They might be the best, or at least most balanced team, I would say, in the Western Conference. Sure, there's more offensive talent on other teams. I mean, both Edmonton and Colorado, I think, fit that bill, though both of those teams, Edmonton, there might be some questions on the back end. Colorado's got a pretty good defensive core. Colorado definitely has some big questions in net, and Edmonton, it's been a shaky start to say the very least, as they've dropped to 0-3 with three worse losses than anything the Kraken have experienced to this point. Still, the Kraken did have some travel and really didn't show up with very much energy in the first period. Grubauer obviously in net, and we got to see Josh Mahura for the first time with Vince Dunn out due to that injury, listed as day-to-day, so at least it's a good sign that he isn't listed as week-to-week or just put on the IR or something like that, especially with the Kraken having the cap issues they have. If they thought this was a longer-term thing, they probably would have just instantly sent him to the IR, or I mean, if they really thought it was long-term, LTIR, getting a little cap relief and try and get some more players in. Either way, Dunn day-to-day misses the second half of a back-to-back. Understandable, but unfortunately, it just definitely put the Kraken behind the eight ball even more than they would have been against the Stars going into this game against a team as good as Dallas is, on the road, with travel, and less than a day's worth of rest. With all that being said about it being a back-to-back and the Kraken not getting off to a particularly energetic looking start, they were definitely on their heels for a good portion of this first period, aside from the one power play that they did get, though even that was pretty anemic in the first period. It probably comes as no surprise that the guy that played best, well, I guess there was actually two of them, but the guy that played best in this game for the Kraken is one of the two players that did not play the first half of a back-to-back, and I'm not talking about Mahura, who did not get very much time on ice. No, Grubauer was actually pretty good in net for the Kraken in this game. You really kept him in it throughout at least the first 15 minutes of the first period, and then continued to keep them in it through the second and especially third period once we get to that. Unfortunately, by the time we get to the late part of the first period, even after the Kraken kill off a Dallas power play, so even though they were not spending a lot of time with the puck, and even when they had the puck, they weren't getting anything to the Dallas net, which is an issue in its own right, but Dallas spending the majority of the time with the puck, the Kraken at least were generally doing a good job of bending but not breaking, not giving up a ton of grade A looks, right up until with about 5 minutes left in the period. Puck that was cleared up along the boards by Borgen makes it past one Kraken player. I think it was Mahura. Was it Mahura? It was either Mahura or Montour that the puck ends up getting past. Not that they really had a chance. Almost gets across the blue line, but Dallas is able to keep it in. They get it back down to the goal line on one side of Grubauer. The pass gets across Grubauer's face to the other side, and Borgen just can't quite get his stick on it first to clear it, so it gets shoved into the net, either through the six hole of Grubauer or just into the side before Grubauer can get back to that side. Really not a lot Grubauer could do about it. Just like that, it's 1-0 Dallas. And honestly, I don't even know that it's a goal that there's any specific fault by any one Kraken player. Just a couple of unfortunate, not even really bounces, but the puck not quite getting across the blue line as it was cleared up along the boards, obviously just out of the reach of the other defenseman alongside Borgen on the play, and then that Borgen isn't able to whack that puck out of the way as it comes into the scrum right in front of the net with Grubauer and Steele, who ends up hitting it in. So yeah, they're not like there was a wide open player or something like that, like we saw with the goals in the Minnesota game or even the game against the Blues. Not really any big defensive breakdowns. Again, Grubauer, not a whole lot more he could have done about this. Just well played by Dallas. However, with the next goal, there's definitely some things that could have been done better on pretty much all fronts. And unfortunately, It comes 13 seconds after the first one as Dallas wins the faceoff, gets right into the Kraken end. It's Jamie Benn who carries it in across the blue line in the corner, and then he just kind of drops it for Wyatt Johnson in the corner of the offensive end and somehow is able to take both Larson and Evans, who was taking Dunn's spot on that top pair, takes both of them with him down towards the net, and then Grubauer doesn't even come out of the net to try and challenge the shot from Wyatt Johnson, so Wyatt Johnson just gets to skate up in completely wide open ice, take his time, pick his spot, take his shot, and with Grubauer not taking away any angles, he's able to quite easily put it into the far top corner to give Dallas the 2-0 lead. Again, just 13 seconds after they had made it 1-0. And well, since you've already seen the final score, you already know that that was all of the scoring in this game. It happens in a very short span, all in the last couple minutes of the first period. Dallas nearly scores again. They do get another pretty good chance about a minute after this all happens, but Grubauer comes up with a good stop there. And we get to the first intermission with the Stars having pretty much walked the Kraken up and down the ice for the most part. The Kraken, I think, actually were fairly close to the Stars by the end of the period in offensive zone time. It's just that the Kraken weren't able to do absolutely anything whatsoever with it. I think they only had 3 shots on, maybe 4 shots on goal by the end of the period. Actually, I think they got a couple right at the end. So they got up to about 6 shots on goal by the end of the period. But even those 6 shots, there was not a dangerous one among them. The Kraken were dumping and chasing to get into the offensive end. Dallas just really locking down the blue line, making it hard for the Kraken to get those clean entries. Certainly not really letting them get set up whatsoever. And even the few times the Kraken did get set up in the offensive end, I don't know if it was Dallas just clogging up lanes or what, but the Kraken could not get to the center of the ice, could not get people in front of the net, and then because of that did not ever choose to actually shoot the puck at the net to create any kind of chaos whatsoever, or even make DeSmith have to make a save, even if it's going to be a relatively easy one. So we get to the first intermission with, Dallas having pretty much dominated play. Even with that unenthusiastic performance by the Kraken in the first period, though, there was no reason, at least at that point anyway, to give up on this game by any means. After all, the Kraken haven't scored a single point in a first period of a game so far, and coming into this game, and still after it, they've scored 6 goals in regulation, with the 7th goal credited in the shootout in the game against Minnesota, but 6 goals, with 4 of those coming in second periods, and then 2 coming in the third period of the game against the Wild. So the Kraken, having already come back from down 2-0 early on in the second period against the Wild, have already shown that they can do that. Now, like I said, Dallas is a stronger opponent than the Wild are, or at least it seems that way early on in the season. And honestly, it might be because of that fact that the Kraken weren't able to make the comeback happen in this game, as they do come out in the second period looking almost like a different team. They're getting into the offensive end and actually sending pucks on net this time, as they almost doubled their shot total by the 6 or 7 minute mark of this second period, and that even comes with a power play that was a Kraken power play, but it really doesn't go much of anywhere. They might have gotten 1 shot on the power play, but I'm not even sure if it made it on net, so it might have just been a shot attempt, not actually a shot on goal. So the power play still not looking great at that point. Dallas then gets a power play not long after. The Kraken are able to kill that off, but throughout the back half of the second period, the Kraken really do, I think, get the better of the Stars throughout the flow of the last few minutes, and they get a couple of pretty good chances, but I mean, nothing that really makes DeSmith work all that hard. Still having trouble getting much as far as traffic in front of the net, and certainly there's no rebound opportunities or anything like that, aside from 1 chance that the right line does create where they are able to get both Wright and Eberle up towards the net, and I think even McCann was able to get towards the net once, so that line was creating some trouble for the Stars, as well as actually the 4th line with Gord, Tanev, and Cartier was maybe even the best line of the night in spite of not playing as much as the other lines. They were certainly the most consistent in getting into the offensive end, even if they weren't always able to generate much off of it. Cartier probably had one of the 2 best chances of the night, though, early on in the second period, as they got right into the offensive end and was set up on a pretty similar play from the one that he scored in Minnesota. Just this one he couldn't get to go. It went right into the gut of DeSmith rather than into the top corner, like when he scored on Fleury the night previous. So anyway, as you already know, Dallas survives all of it without giving up a goal to the Kraken, so we go to the third, with the Kraken actually starting the third on a power play after a last-second high-sticking on Alexiak. But that power play, really, the Kraken, again, aren't able to make much of anything happen on it. They don't even really get into the offensive end until about halfway through the power play, and then once there, just can't quite get any good looks. They can't get close to the net with the puck. They aren't able to get much traffic in front of the net, even with the man advantage. So it doesn't go anywhere. And even after the power play comes to an end here at the start of the third period, there's really not much of anything happening for the Kraken offensively, as things stay pretty stagnant. Dallas maybe starting to let off the gas a little bit offensively to play better in their end of the ice. Not that they really needed to from how things had been going. But yeah, not much of anything happens for the first 5 minutes of this third period. But towards the middle of the period, the Kraken finally start to show a little bit more of that urgency that we saw in bursts, at least in the second period, and actually get a couple of pretty good chances. Jared McCann has one that he just isn't quite able to get all of the puck. Otherwise, he would have certainly had a goal. The Kraken also end up with a fourth power play, which this time does look pretty dangerous. They get a couple pretty good chances, get some actual shots on net that, if there wasn't a goaltender, would have actually gone in, so that's progress. Still, nothing ends up getting past DeSmith in net for the Stars, so that's killed off. And although the Kraken do continue to get the better of the Stars throughout most of this third period, from there they have a lot of momentum going for them. In general, looking like the better team at this point in the game. They actually even end up passing the Stars in shots on goal at one point here in the middle part of the third period, just as this power play comes to an end, which, considering they were nearly outshot by 10 shots in the first period alone, it's, yeah, definitely some work that the Kraken put in offensively to get that shot total back to even close, much less passing the Stars, and actually they do end up outshooting the Stars by the end of the game. Still, not creating nearly as dangerous of chances, other than that one that I talked about for Cartier, the one really good look that McCann had in one chaotic moment that right line also caused. But the Kraken really just not making DeSmith work, at least consistently, very hard in net. And then as we get into the final few minutes, the Stars are finally able to slow down that momentum with some thanks from the officials, as there's a not quite as bad of a call as what the Kraken got going in their favor in Minnesota, so I wouldn't necessarily say that it's karma coming to bite the Kraken the next day after that call, but it's still a pretty horrendous call. I think it even goes past the point of just saying it was a soft call into the it's just straight up a bad call territory, as Montour gets sent to the box for tripping when all he did was maybe touch the midsection of, I think it was Dodonov, as Dononov's entering the offensive end. Montour's stick hits Donov a little bit in the chest, but it's not even like Mahura is trying to hit him with his stick. He's just like turning his body. His stick touches Dodonov, and Dodonov just dives onto the ice. And yeah, the refs decided that that was a trip somehow, even though there was no stick anywhere near his feet. It could have, and probably should have, been an embellishment call on him, and the Kraken could have gotten that power play. Instead, they give the power play to the Stars. That kills off 2 minutes. Grubauer actually makes a good save there. He had a couple other great saves in this third period, even with everything the Kraken had going in their favor. He makes 2 breakaway saves against the Stars, so keeps the Kraken in this game, which they do get one more pretty good chance as they eventually go empty net with 2 minutes left, but that one ends up either going wide of the net or maybe DeSmith got a piece of it. So the Kraken not able to even pull back to within 1 with the empty net, and the Stars do close out the shutout. So yeah, Kraken lose 2-0, fall to 1-2 on the season, but it was always going to be a tough ask with travel, second half of a back-to-back against a team as good as the Stars, especially when you're missing one of your 3 best players, if not your best player. Honestly, I think Montour is kind of challenging Dunn for the best defenseman on the team right now. He has looked very good through 3 games, but either way, there's no way around it. Missing Vince Dunn is a huge loss for the Kraken, more so than the Stars really missing anybody on their team. There's a couple of players that probably would have been bigger losses for the Stars, but the point is, it was going to be a tough ask for the Kraken to win this one, and even just staying in it, Grubauer looked great, and yeah, the Kraken could have actually played the first period, and that might have helped, but, and real quick there, just to be clear, I'm not saying that Vince Dunn is a better player than anybody that the Stars have. That's certainly not true. All I was saying is that the Kraken miss Dunn more than the Stars would miss necessarily any individual player because of how well-rounded that team is, and we've already seen through the back half of last season how much the Kraken suffer, especially offensively, with Dunn out of the lineup. So it's just, yeah, just the comparative thing there of how much the Kraken miss Dunn when he's out of the lineup for how good he is, versus the Stars have a lot more talent on that team to kind of fill a void when they do have a guy go down, like they did coming into this game. All in all, then, a pretty unfun game to watch for many Kraken fans. Obviously, the Kraken never score, really don't look that competitive for chunks of the game, and while they did at least give us some hope towards the end, it was, yeah, just kind of depressing would be going a bit far, but it was not necessarily the way that I think any of us were hoping to spend our Sunday nights. I suppose, at the very least, if you want to feel a little bit better after this game, the Stars did shut out the team that they played on the first half of their back-to-back in the New York Islanders 3-0, so at the very least the Kraken are better than the Islanders. I mean, just by the 2 games that Dallas played against those 2 teams alone anyway. And also the Kraken did win the night before, so if you need a little pick-me-up, then you can go watch the R&R from Saturday night instead of this one. Anyway, with all that being said, I think we might as well just get to the 3 stars and move on to the next game on Tuesday. The Kraken schedule going from 1 game, then 3 days off, then back-to-back, and we are right into games every other day for pretty much the rest of this month. So it's a busy back half of October here, so at least won't have to sit on this loss for too long anyways, as the Kraken go to Nashville on Tuesday to face a, so far anyway, struggling Predators team, though a team that made some pretty big pickups in this offseason. So this is a team that's certainly more talented than how they've performed to this point in the season, and maybe this is the best time to be playing them, as there's a lot of new faces there, and they're probably getting used to each other. There's some rust to knock off there, and just familiarity that they're probably working on. So for the Kraken, maybe the best possible time that you could be playing the Predators, because I still think this is a team that is going to push for one of those playoff spots, either in the Central or more likely one of the wild card teams. And for what it's worth as far as that's concerned, Minnesota, I think, is another team that's in that mix. So for the Kraken, getting that win in Minnesota and then hopefully getting this win in Nashville, those would be pretty big wins if they do want to get into and potentially grab one of those wild card spots come the end of the season. These are some of the teams that they could be fighting for those spots with. Not Dallas. Dallas is easily going to be one of the top 3 teams in the Central, I think, so we don't have to worry about the Kraken dropping points to the Stars, other than it just would be nice to have those points yourself. That whole tangent aside, though, let's get to the Kraken 3 stars, as always brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you do want to help influence and decide these 3 stars after every Kraken game, you can help support the channel more than you already are by watching to this point, which thank you for doing that by going to the link down below to Patreon and helping support the channel over there. There are some guys that I feel like had decent performances in, I think Montour once again looked really good for the Kraken. He was a standout player. Even Tanev, I thought, had a pretty good night. That whole 4th line in general was probably the most consistent line on the ice for the Kraken in this game. But I gotta say, with a game like this one, especially the first period the Kraken played, the only guy that I think is really worthy of a star in this game is Philip Grubauer. Now, sure, he does let in 2 goals. He gets credited for the loss, and one of those goals, he certainly could have done more to try and stop. The second one, he doesn't come out of the net nearly far enough to take away any angles from a talented young shooter in Wyatt Johnston, but he still absolutely kept the Kraken in this game through really the first period all around those 2 goals, as well as bits and pieces of the second period, and then the 2 big breakaways in the third when the Kraken were starting to get some momentum. Even though that momentum didn't end up turning into anything, it certainly would have killed any chance the Kraken had one of those 2 breakaways gone in, but Grubauer shuts both of those down, so I'm going to give him the Lone Star of the night in the Lone Star state. That was unintentional, but yeah, Grubauer, the 1 star for the Kraken in this one. And yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below until Tuesday. So if you made it to this point, thank you very much for getting here. And yeah, back-to-backs. First back-to-back to the season. Let's just say back-to-backs can be a lot from the content end of things as well, so a little bit more scatterbrained here towards the end, but we'll get through it and get to Tuesday. Again, thank you for making it to this point, and as always, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!